Legio Lysanda. What to say here? I guess the standout for me is the fact that this Legio's almost in a constant state of change. They move with a front. They're probably heavily fleet-based in the sense that they spend a lot of time in transit to their next mission assignment. I think they're really cool. They're kind of like the Imperial Guard of the Titan Legios. And unlike most Legios, they're not anchored to a specific forge world or culture. These guys kind of get to stride out in the galaxy and sample things as they're presented with the opportunity. On top of that, you see a lot of the Legio paint schemes that factor in the checkered board. That's been done before, but the addition of that nice blue into this really makes their color scheme quite appealing. If I was to do it myself, I'd probably go with a Sotek blue along with the bleached bone and checkered pattern. And on the tabletop, I could see this being a pretty nice paint scheme. But aside from the lore, if you haven't checked that video, you want to know more, check out the lore video. Let's see how this Legio acts out on the tabletop. The first Lysanda Legio trait is called Beyond Measure. This one's kind of interesting. How it works is it allows you to deploy all of your Lysanda forces or your Lysanda maniple at once as if it's one activation. If you deploy this way, your opponent is allowed to decide whether they're going to go first or second. So essentially they win the first turn roll off automatically. If you deploy this way, the benefit is your Titans gain a +1 to hit and a +1 to their command checks. This one doesn't apply to narrative missions, but we're looking at this from a match play lens, so who cares? Where I see this one being interesting is the +1 to command checks will definitely benefit your Warhounds, but it'll also benefit your other Titan classes. That'll be the Warbringers, Warlords, and Reavers. They also get a +1 to hit, so again, this makes this one interesting, especially if you're looking at giving your Titans first fire orders. I'm thinking about Apocalypse missile launchers early game to drop shields. So this is nice. It's plug and play. It lets you do whatever you want with it depending on your build, and I definitely see a place in the game for it. And on the flip side, if you're worried about your Titans taking a lot of damage in the early game, turn 1, turn 2, there's actually a lot of really good upgrades in the Legio book that you can do just to help you weather that storm. So this is definitely playable. Your next Legio trait is called Stillness of Mind, and this gives your Princeps the dominant control of your Titan. What it does is it allows you to add 2 to the result when rolling to see if a shutdown order is removed. Your Princeps reliably can fully boot up your Titan from a shutdown, whether that's voluntary or involuntary. And this one does absolutely nothing for me. I have actually never had a Titan forced to shut down, nor have I ever given a Titan shutdown orders. If I let things get that far with one of my god machines, I just throw them at my opponent and let them go out in a blaze of glory. So, to anybody listening, please fill me in on where you would like to use this one, but for my playstyle, Stillness of Mind really does nothing. Our Lysanda specific stratagem is fittingly called Frontier Guard. This one fits the lore, and I think it works really well on the tabletop. It clocks in at 2 stratagem points, so if you're playing a confrontation game level, which is really common, you can definitely pull this one off as you'll have a minimum of 3. What it does is it allows all of your Lysanda Titans within 6 inches of an objective marker to add +1 to their weapon skill or ballistic skill up to a maximum of 2+. I did some reading online about this one, and I think it's actually more applicable and handy than a lot of people are giving it credit for. The Loyalist supplement actually specifies that this is within 6 inches of an objective marker. However, they go as far as saying in brackets, for their own victory conditions. Now, I'll invite the rules lawyers out here for this one, but I think this applies to a lot of the standard missions. Think about it. If you have to take out a specific enemy Titan, I would read that as in any Titan within 6 inches of the opponent you need to kill. This applies. You're doing vital cargo. I would say if you're within 6 inches of your opponent's edge, then you get this benefit. For retrieval, if you have Titans within 6 inches of the retrieval objective, then this stratagem would apply. I would say for the standard missions, rules as written, this actually applies across the board for all missions you want to look at, making it very handy for a Lysanda player, especially if you're using some fast Titans that can get anywhere on the board. I'm happy to be wrong on this one, but as I read it and look at the standard missions, I think this one applies quite heavily across the board, but let the rules as written and rules as intended argument begin. The Lysanda specific war gear is called Mantle of Responsibility. For 15 points, you can allow a Titan to re-roll a result of 1 or 2 when making a command check. This one's, for me, situational. If you're running a Warlord heavy mana pool, then you're not really going to be worried about your command checks. Where it really starts to shine, though, would be something for your Warhounds. If, say, you had something like 5 or 6 Warhounds and you split your squadrons, you could leverage your Princeps and Yoris to get your orders off in one squadron, and then if you upgraded another Warhound with the Mantle of Responsibility, we'll call it your Princeps Secundus, that could be your leader of your second squadron group. And when you're issuing squadron orders, just issue the order off of that one. And I would imagine this could let you reliably get orders off on both your squadrons. But again, this would be situational depending on how you want to run your Lysanda mana pools. But it's got a place. If you really need those orders to get off, then for only 15 points to basically get orders off across the board, this could be worth it. Taking a look at our fearless frontier leaders on the Eastern Fringe, let's dive into the Princeps traits. The first trait is Harrowed by Betrayal. Apparently I forgot the ED on this slide, but we're gonna keep going. This allows your Princeps to select the Wrathful result if they awaken their machine spirit. Potentially handy as it gives you a free shot on a 4+ with one of your Titan's weapons, so you may lose the activation for what you wanted, but at least you'll still be able to fire some guns, so not a complete loss on this one. Our next trait is called Serene. This one allows your Princeps and Yoris to ignore any negative effects to their command checks. As well, it also lets them ignore anything that would make them re-roll a successful command check. So this will allow you to issue orders quite effectively for your Princeps and Yoris Titan. With only the Loyalist Legio book being out right now, I feel like this one's kind of hard to judge. I'm thinking when the Trader supplement comes out, there's going to be a lot of kind of command check shenanigans going on, and a lot of ways for the traders to drastically impact your command check values. So As it sits right now, I don't see this being that valuable, but in the future, this one may actually be a pretty big deal. Last but not least, we have the trait of Vanguard Leader, and this one's actually mind-blowing when you think about it, and I would say actually worth kind of building a list around. What it does is it allows all your friendly units within 3 inches of your Princeps Senioris, including your Princeps Senioris, to declare power to locomotors for free, meaning you do not need to push your reactors to get that extra distance. This is going to be huge for something like a Regia Maniple, which could potentially allow your warlords just to keep moving for free, which is huge for something like a warlord that's really hurting in the mobility department. On the flip side, if you were running your Princeps Senioris in a Warhound heavy list and you squadroned up your Senioris, you can have squadrons moving extremely far without the need to push that Warhound's tiny reactor. This is going to be extremely handy in missions like Vital Cargo and Retrieval. It's even going to be potentially handy for getting into your opponent's deployment zone and denying them points for holding that. This is kind of a no-brainer for me. I would value this one higher than any of the standard traits you can get in the rulebook for your Princeps Senioris, and if you're going down the Lysanda route, then I would say seriously look at building this one into your list, because it's too good to pass up. Speaking of the list, let's get into where I would go for a Lysanda battle group. Right off the bat, this one is not for the faint of heart. There's going to be a lot of moving parts and a lot of things to keep track of. So bear with me, I'm going to try and explain this the best I can. With Lysanda, there's actually a few elements I want to make use of, and I kind of feel like Lysanda is one of those forces that's better off on the move. So I want to try and make use of their trait Beyond Measure, the War Gear, Mantle of Responsibility, and that cool stratagem Frontier Guard. I'm also going to do something I've never really done before, and I'm going to build this list off of 2 Maniples. In fact, they're both going to be Lupercal Maniples. One of these is going to kind of act as my forward aggressive element, and the other one's going to be kind of a backline support. Let me get into the breakdown and loadouts. I should mention, if you're not familiar with the Lupercal Maniple, what this does is it lets you basically pull apart and assemble your squadrons as you want, turn by turn. So you've got a lot of flexibility in how you squadron your Titans up. On top of that, this list is going to heavily be making use of squadrons for things like squadron orders, merging shields, and coordinated strikes. But to lead the first Lupercal Maniple, I'm going to have a Warhound in the tried and true loadout of a Vulcan Megabolter and Plasma Blast Gun. This is pretty good for any situation. I'm going to upgrade my Princeps Senioris with the Mantle of Responsibility to allow me to reroll failed command checks of 1 or a 2, so I can reliably get orders off for this forward element. I'm also going to take the Princeps trait of Vanguard Leader from the Lysanda entry. And what this does is it allows all Titans within 3 inches, including the Senioris themselves, to push power to locomotors for extra distance without pushing their reactors and building up heat. This is going to keep this forward Lupercal Maniple extremely mobile. Backing up the Senioris, I'm going to have 2 Warhounds with the exact same loadout. These guys are both going to have dual blast guns, potentially getting them really hot and high damage dealers. To help weather the storm of the shots that the squadron's going to take early game, I'm going to upgrade them both with Bastion shields, allowing them to push voids to full once each without pushing the reactors. This is going to keep them really durable. If these two Warhounds start overheating like crazy, I've upgraded them both with plasmatic binders. This is going to let them, once per game, vent plasma on a 2+ rather than a 4+ in the damage control phase. When one of them gets too hot, I'll just activate the binders and cool them down. And to top it off, we've got a Shield Stripper Warhound with 2 Vulcan Mega Bolters. Largely, I'm going to run this element probably in 2 squadrons of 2 with a Bastion Shield each. The Mega Bolter Warhound, this one's going to be largely my objective grabber, so it's going to be the one I try and achieve vital cargo and retrieval with. The other ones are just there to take hits and cover its retreat. This clocks in at a total of 985. Pretty pricey once you factor in all those upgrades, but I think they're going to really help make a difference. The next Lupercal, or the Backline Support element, is going to be led by a Warhound with 2 Turbo Laser Destructors. These guys are just going to try and reach out and deal some long-range damage and kind of cover the advance of the forward element. Again, I'm going to upgrade the Senioris with Mantle of Responsibility just to make sure I get those orders off, especially the first fire order. And the Senioris is going to have the generic trait Favored by Fortune, allowing them to re-roll 1 miss per turn. Backing up the Senioris, I've got a Warhound with 2 Turbo Lasers. Once again, we're going to go for that Bastion Shielding upgrade to push Voids to full without pushing. And another Warhound, this one will have 1 Turbo Laser and 1 Vulcan Mega Bolter, just in case something starts bugging my backline and I need to do some effective shield dropping. I can always push the Turbo Lasers for Shield Bane, but ideally that's not where I want to go with these ones. Once again, we've got the Bastion Shielding. This element clocks in at 685 points, plus the 985 points for the forward element, and that's going to bring me to a total of 1670. Just because I had points to spare, I've actually upgraded all the remaining Titans without Bastion shields to the better shields. So this will bring the list out to a total of 1700 points, which is kind of nice because it might give me the ability of denying my opponent that underdog margin, or at least make it really hard for them to achieve. And it's pretty close to the top of the scale for a confrontation. Alright, let's see how this stupidity plays out on the tabletop. Bear with me, we've got quite a bit to go over first. For starters, bear in mind the Lupercal Maniple lets me plug and play squadrons wherever I want by the game turn. So I've always got that flexibility, and this is going to work for squadron orders, merging shields, and coordinated strikes. So we got some nice bonuses there. Number 2, each one of these maniples has Mantle of Responsibility, meaning I am reliably going to be getting these orders off whether you like it or not. All of these Titans have Bastion Shielding. I get to take turn one at a time going Voids to full and free of charge, balancing that out among the squadron as I see fit. On top of that, the Titans that are going to get hot, especially in the forward element with those dual blast guns, have the plasmatic binders, so I get to choose when I'm going to vent heat on a 2+. All that being said, let's go forward with the game plan. So, let's say we were playing the retrieval mission, and I have to get a down Titan crew. For most mission sets, I am going to deploy using the Lysanda trait Beyond Measure, and I'm going to deploy in squadrons. The downside of this is my opponent gets to choose whether they go first or second. The pro of this, I don't care what they choose. If I'm going first, I get a +1 to hit. Yes, they're more than likely going to be getting a cover bonus, but I get a +1 because I've deployed using Beyond Measure. If they go second, I still get the +1, and regardless of circumstance, I'm also getting a +1 to my orders. On top of that, even if they go first, every Titan has the Bastion shielding, so both of these squadrons, or I guess I should say 3 of these squadrons, can take a hit, and I don't need to worry about it. When I deploy using Beyond Measure, I'm going to be deploying the Backline Support element as a squadron, and I'm going to deploy the Forward element as 2 squadrons of 2. Each squadron has a Bastion shield in it, and they are all going to be within 3 inches of that Princeps and yours using the Vanguard Leader trait. I'll be issuing the Backline Support a First Fire, and the Forward element a Full Stride. Keep in mind that Vanguard Leader lets me go power to locomotors without pushing my reactor. So this Forward element is going to be fast, and I can get pretty much wherever I need to be on the board to either set up shots for turn 2 or just keep pressing to the objective. In this case, for retrieval, once that Forward element gets there, and they're still going to be getting cover fire from the Backline Support, whether they're shield baning or not, who cares? I'm throwing shots downrange. Once I get that Forward element within 6 inches of that objective, at this point, I'm going to pop off the Lysanda stratagem Frontier Guard. And this is going to give pretty much that whole Forward element mana pool a +1 to their ballistic skill and weapon skill, and this occurs in the strategy phase. What those Titans are going to do is likely cover that double Vulcan Megabolter Titan as it retreats back to my board edge. At this point, both mana pools only have one thing to do: cover the escape, no matter how they need to. And once that escape happens for the retrieval mission, they're free to carry on and do whatever they need to do and just fully enjoy all the benefits of the squadron rules. Where things get interesting would be if, say I was doing the Vital Cargo mission. Obviously, I would keep full striding that squadron until they're in position of within 6 inches of my opponent's board edge, and then I would pop off that Frontier Guard later and do whatever damage I could. And there are certain missions where things wouldn't necessarily apply. I'm thinking Engage and Destroy, and I believe there's another mission out there that might be a little finicky. But I know for sure Retrieval, I can pull that strat when I need to. Vital Cargo, it works. And Glory and Honor, so I may charge that Forward element towards a specific Titan and pop it when we're within 6 inches of that enemy Titan that needs to go down. Either way, you've got 2 pretty beefy elements coming at you with the Backline Support and the Forward Aggressors, with great order potential and a lot of durability with the Bastion shielding, and just making use of those Lysanda Princeps traits. That was my take of a Lysanda match play list. Interesting Legio, I gotta say I did really enjoy the lore for them. It was pretty flushed out and nice to see some good details and history. In terms of the tabletop, they're not overly groundbreaking, like there was a few standouts, but overall I don't think they're too powerful of a Legio, and frankly most of the strength for the list I came up with I think comes from universal upgrades, but they definitely built on the Legio rules and I think had an overall good synergy. Let me know what you thought, any direction you think would have been better served by Lysanda, And if I got anything wrong, which isn't a stretch to imagine, hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will see everybody for the next Legio video, whichever Mystery Legion we end up covering there. As per usual, there'll be a lore video shortly followed by another on the tabletop. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.